Now, drinking might feel like it's a quick escape, but it's quietly stealing your health, your energy, many other things in your life. Now, for me, it really watered down my identity, my role as a father, as a dad, and all that thankfully changed once I stopped drinking alcohol. Kevin, I became an ex-drinker in 2013, and it's been my great pleasure to help thousands of people to stop drinking alcohol and to start rebuilding their lives. Now, today I'm going to share 5 hidden costs of drinking alcohol that really screw around with your life, plus practical fixes to snatch back control and to live your best life. So stick around till the end. I'll give you a couple of bonus tips for the mums and dads out there. Okay, cost 1, erosion of your emotional resilience. Now, all this alcohol over time, it takes away your natural ability to handle stress, right? To handle stress naturally. It weakens you because you're relying on this toxic brew to give yourself a break and even just to cope with life's ups and downs. Now, the more you do it, the more fragile you become. It's a psychological reliance just as much as a physical one, and it hits your emotions very hard. Now, think about this. You rely on taking a poison to make you happy. You also rely on a poison to stop making you sad or whatever other negative emotions you're trying to avoid. That's where the real dependence comes in, and then you get stuck. Now, one of my biggest issues with this was something that I never realized until after I'd stopped, and stupid as it sounds, I was handing down this awful dependence down onto my son. Like I said, this is not a dependence on the actual substance of alcohol. It's the dependence on you thinking that something outside of yourself is going to help you to cure something that you need to search for the answers inside. Now, before we move on to the fixes, take a look at habitsv2.com if you're looking for coaching. We've got options depending on how much help or support you really want whenever you're ready. What's the fix? You can replace all the drinking and you can unhook all those good emotions and the bad ones. So, when I was drinking, I was linking those good emotions, so I couldn't feel happy unless I was drinking. So there was lots of different situations where I wouldn't feel happy, like going out with for dinner, being with my friends, being with my family, if I wasn't having a drink. And a lot of the negative emotions I was drinking in order to push them down. Now, it takes a bit of time and it takes a good bit of energy to figure things out, to figure what it is that you like to do instead. But once you get there, you're going to be happier, healthier, and much more resilient. And I love that idea of the resilience. It takes a lot to get me going these days. Right? It takes a lot to get me anxious or angry or any negative emotions because you just get control over yourself. Now, the reason the alcohol worked is because that's the way you trained your brain. It's what you trained your brain to do. You gave it these shortcuts and you gave it these crutches, and your brain accepted them gladly because the brain works on the easiest route from A to B, right? So you're feeling anxious. The easiest route to get anxious is to drink some alcohol, and it works in the moment, but in the long term it just makes the anxiety and the stress worse and worse. Every time you make that shortcut, you don't learn the skills in order to control the emotions on their own. So, as I said, I'm using this analogy for both the emotions that you want to bring up, the good emotions in your life, and the emotions that you want to bring down. It's easy to make yourself happy, right? It's simple to ground yourself, to calm yourself, to ease past any guilt and other negative emotions in your life. And these are just skills, and the skills that anybody can learn. The second cost is accelerated physical health decline. Now, this is the big one for me. It's all the health issues that you can think of to do with alcohol. I mean, alcohol causes over 200 different health conditions. Liver disease, heart problems, cancers. Now, where the alcohol flows, the damage goes. This is such a massive threat if you want lifelong health. It's such a massive threat to your health, to your relationships, to your finances, to your time, and to your energy. We don't think about this when we're young. We're not getting the full impact of this stupid poison when we're just starting out. Our bodies can really overcome it very quickly. But it's one of the biggest reasons that most of my clients are, most of my clients are over 40 and they're looking into how can they stop, how can they get this stuff out of their lives at that stage. And there comes a time when you have to face into these things. They become real for you. The consequences become real. They start to get in your face and you just can't avoid them anymore. And that's scary. I know that. I've been there. But the fix is to, first of all, stop the flow. Stop the flow, do the work, move on. Prioritize feeding yourself good food and avoid as much crap as you can. Right? This is for the health part of this. Exercise and enjoy the exercise. So don't do an exercise that you're not enjoying. You know, enjoyment is part and parcel of you not only getting out there and exercising your body, but you're also exercising your mind and you're feeling good about it. You know, we know what the fix is. We just got to put more time and energy into doing these things. And there's no guarantee of a quantity of life. So, you know, you never know what's going to happen to you down the road. You never know what's going to happen to you today, tomorrow, the next day. I just read of a young footballer from the UK who was 28 years of age and got in a car crash with his brother, and that was it. It was over. And it was only, I think, 10 days after he got married. It's just life is like that sometimes. There's no guarantee. Nobody can assure you of longevity in life. But quality of life is a completely different beast. We can all get more out of our lives by thinking long and hard about what we're putting in, the inputs. You know, what we're putting into our body, what we're allowing into our minds. Cost 3 is shagged up sleep and energy levels. Now, you know, this impinges on everything. By the time I stopped drinking alcohol, I was exhausted. I didn't even realize how tired I was when I was drinking. You know, alcohol damage kind of sneaks up on you, right? It's very insidious. You know, we have a fixed amount of energy to use every day, more or less. And that energy level is set by so many different factors in your life, including diet, sleep, metabolism, so on. And it all depends on the functions of your body, what your body has to go through every minute of every day to keep you alive. So, you know, the energy levels that you're going to be using. And drinking alcohol is just a huge drain on those energy levels, right? Just to bring you back to what we call normal. It's responsible for a collapse in how much energy your body is also able to produce. So the upshot is that because the alcohol is stealing away from the energy, because because when you're drunk you can't produce a lot more energy, there's a lot less energy overall to use, and that energy pocket is, a lot of that is being sapped away just to recover your body, just for your body to recover and your brain to recover. So the fix again is stating the bleeding obvious, right? Stop the alcohol. You stop that at the very least, you stop that drain, and you stop the energy drain, right? You level out your energy levels, and hopefully you bring your energy levels back up so you've got more energy to deal with. You'll sleep better, you'll digest your food better, you'll have more energy to make better food choices, which will boost your energy even more. You'll sleep a bit better, and so on and so forth. And it's just like a good, vigorous cycle. Now, when I was drinking, my life was all over the place. I had some routines, but I had no kind of consistency with it. Since I stopped, I've, just developed a much more consistent life, right? It's happened over a long period of time. I stopped in 2013, right? So, I've been doing this for a long time. Even when I'm traveling, even when I'm living in different places, we tend to live 3 months here, 3 months there. And I get much more, even though we're out of routine, I get back into the routines very quickly. And that consistency is part of that vigorous cycle that I was talking about. And it gives you a far more stable foundation for everything else. Now, cost 4 is neglect of personal growth. This is all about pursuing long-term goals, dreams, ambitions, and just fit in everything that you want into your life, right? And again, we're looking at your time and your energy as two of the biggest currencies in your life. What you spend these on matters the most, not only in the moment, but down the road. It is something that you spend. If you're spending your life dealing with the consequences of what you're putting into your mouth, whether it's food, smoking, alcohol, then you're not able to use that same energy on other things that are going to move you forwards and to make your life worth living. You've heard of compounding, right? If you haven't, look it up, because it's something that Especially if you're young, you can make a pretty sizable fortune out of this if you're into compounding financial terms. In terms of what we're talking about here, we're talking about compounding in terms of the time and energy that you're spending today in the moment. Not only gives you nice returns right now, but it also gives you more. It's more than the sum that you put into it into the future, right? So your time and energy expenditure now just makes things way easier, which makes the value of your time and energy go up over time. I can honestly say that each hour that I have now, each hour that I spend now is worth 5 hours when I was drinking, just because of that one principle. The amount of waste that I was having, you put a load of alcohol into your body the night before and the whole next day is wasted. So 1 hour that I have now in the mornings, I can do more than I was doing in the full day after I was dealing with the hangover from alcohol. And that really is what leads to so much regret in life. So the fix is, again, stop the poison. Start redirecting that time and the energy that you used to use for drinking and put it into stuff that is going to make you grow, make your life grow. Bit here, bit there, and just watch as your life starts to flourish, right? Screw regrets. Regrets are something that's happened. The more you get into this journey, the fewer regrets that you'll have. Life is about learning lessons from your failures, not regretting them. A lot of the time, a lot of the stuff that I had regrets about when I was drinking, I regretted more and more and more because I wasn't changing anything. I wasn't learning from it. Einstein said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expected different results. But you can only do that. You can only look at your regrets, look at the past, look at the failures if you take time to think about why it is that you failed, what it is that went wrong. Like I said, all the years that I look back and I drank, I think about them as just being dumb because they didn't need to be repeated over and over again. But, like I said, 13 years into this now, and I really have got no regrets because I'm loving the life that I'm living. Now, if you go back and you hate the life that you're living, then fair enough, you've got regrets. But I had to go through all of that. That's the position that I'm in now, is if I hadn't gone through all that drinking, if I hadn't done the things that I've done, I wouldn't be where I am now. And I love the life that I'm living right now. Okay? So, cost 5 is social isolation, more from positive communities than anything else. For me, it's alcohol pulls you into these alcohol-centric circles. When I was a drinker, all my friends were drinkers by design. Right? Who else was going to put up with me and my antics? Once you see it from the other side, once you stop drinking alcohol for a while, it's not hard not to avoid these people like the plague, these situations like the plague. You can be a non-drinker and hang around with drinkers because then it's your position to go, right, I've had enough now and I'm pissing off. But people who don't drink won't put up with your shit if you're a drinker, if you're drunk. Think about it. If you're with, let's say, if there's 5 people and one of them is drinking and getting drunk, how long are the other 4 people going to put up with that person getting drunk? It is what it is. The fix is, once you stop drinking, even if you crave the bar for a while or the party or the drinking session at home, whatever it is, if you're serious about it, you're going to adapt, and you're going to adapt quickly, right? We're wired to be social. Right, we're brain wired for this from whenever, hundreds of thousands of years. We all love to be safe, to have fun, to keep people together and be with other people. I would put other people and having good relationships probably at the top of my hierarchy of things that I want to invest my time and energy in. Right, it's different when you're a drinker. I'll grant you that, but different doesn't mean worse. When I was a drinker and I had a few drinks in me, you do calm down a little bit, and you kind of open up a little bit more. But opening up doesn't mean to say that it's a better version of you. Now that I've stopped drinking alcohol, there's no embarrassment, no hangovers, no morning after regrets, no pissing your money down the toilet, literally. So I can only speak for myself. But since I stopped drinking, yes, it's been harder to find friends. It's so easy. You walk into a pub and you sit next to somebody in a bar and have a few drinks with them, and they're your friend, right? But once you have friends afterwards, I just find that connecting with good people, I find it way easier in a way that I hadn't before. I found it very difficult. I started drinking because I felt shy. Shyness was one of the reasons why I wanted to drink so much in a pub in the beginning. Now, it's more rewarding, much more rewarding for me to be around the people who are sharing my goals in life, those growth goals, and reinforcing those goals as well. And they're not only sharing these things, but they're much more willing to, or much more capable of holding you accountable for things, of saying stuff to you, say, well, you're saying this, but you're not doing that. I think that's half the battle. So let's do a couple of quick bonuses for the mums and dads, like I promised. Cost 6 is just potential for those patterns to keep going on down the generations. They say that a lot of the stuff that happens can continue for 5 generations after you've gone. So consciously or subconsciously, your drinking is going to shape your children's attitudes, at least towards alcohol. And it's also likely to increase their risk of adopting other unhealthy behaviors as well, right? If you can turn a blind eye to the alcohol, you can turn a blind eye to almost anything else, right? This was the one thing that got me to stop. Every parent wants their kids to live a rich, long, healthy life. And this drinking thing, that clashes right up against that, right up against that. My drinker's identity, or my dad's identity, the drinker's identity and the dad's identity, they don't go together. 100% certain that my past drinking set a really poor example for my son and brought massive guilt onto my shoulders with that, and rightly so. So if there was ever a reason for a mum and dad to stop drinking, their kids are it, right? Showing healthier behaviors, it really does set a positive example for your kids. Being honest builds trust and awareness, and hopefully, if you've got small kids, this goes a long way to empower them to make the best choices in the future, right? To deal with their emotions better, to deal with their thoughts better, not to just get dragged into a negative habit because it's just what everyone else does. So, this always sounds like I'm getting on my soapbox, but, if I was to go back and say this to myself, I will be saying to myself, take responsibility now, and you're going to avoid a lot of unnecessary guilt later on. So, cost number 7 is addiction to unhealthy coping mechanisms, right? For me, and again, this is for the mums and dads, using alcohol to manage stress creates a dependency that replaces healthier coping strategies, which again, you hand down or don't hand down in terms of the healthier coping strategies, right? People talk about generational wealth in terms of money and houses and, bank accounts, all that kind of stuff. The best generational wealth that you can hand down is emotional resilience, rational thinking skills. I'm speaking again from a personal point of view because that's the only one that I'm qualified for. Now, one of my clients, when I'm coaching somebody and I find out they've got children, especially young kids, it gives me a huge motivation to try and help them as much as I can, to really put some effort into it, because strong values and beliefs and principles based on the values and beliefs, these are the cornerstones of a good life that you can pass down to your son or your children. I'm talking about my son. My son was 21 when I stopped drinking alcohol, and it wasn't that I never tried to do my best for him. I always tried to do my best. I was there for him all the way through, and I tried to do my best in those areas, the areas that I was responsible for. But the alcohol let me down big time, and I didn't know it at the time. It took me a long time to come to terms with that one. So again, you only get this chance once with your kids. It goes so quickly. Think long and hard about the role of alcohol in your life and in theirs. So I'll leave it there for today. I hope you get some motivation to start your own alcohol-free journey. It's been a blast for me since I've stopped. Definitely the best decision that I ever took. Nobody's going to force you to do it. Nobody can do it for you, right? You have to do this yourself. Check us out at habitsv2.com if you want some really straightforward coaching, straightforward advice. We've got a really good program there that offers you a lot of this down-to-earth stuff, and it is only common sense that we're trying to get across. So those are the 7 hidden costs of drinking and how to overcome them, and to really thrive for yourself and your family. Drop a comment below and your thoughts or experiences. I'd love to hear from you. Check out my other videos for more tips on trying to get some really healthy living. All right, take care of yourself. Onwards and upwards. Bye now.